Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in the community. What did they do to get started, and what do they do to continue to accelerate in the leadership lane? And today I'm getting to talk to another special guest. Her name is LaTonya McElroy. She is an SPHR. She is a SHRM-CP. And she is the Vice President of Human Resources for BCS Data Center Operations. And LaTonya and I both get to serve on the Texas SHRM State Council as she leads one of our core leadership areas in certification. And I am so honored to have you on the show today, LaTonya.
It's an honor to be here, Bruce. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man.
I feel special.
You are special, and I appreciate you being on. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about certification and the value of that. And so I'm excited to get into all of that. But I'd like to just kind of start with your organization. I would love for you just to share just a brief highlight of what is BCS and how do they serve their customers?
Okay, so BCS is a data center operations company, and I've had people ask me, so do you host websites or no, we basically are the facility operators. We manage facilities for data centers, and so our responsibility is to make sure that the operations remain the operations continue and that our customers can sleep at night. That's our biggest emphasis, is to make sure that where all the data is stored for our customers, and there are some large companies that we store data for. So when you think about data, think about, for example, your financial institution. There is a place that they rely on to save and secure the data that's involved in operating a financial institution. And that place is usually a building filled with servers and cooling equipment and power equipment. And our facilities operators do infrastructure. They do facilities maintenance in terms of HVAC and electrical type maintenance. And they do preventive, predictive, and repair maintenance. And it's just there are a whole lot of other services that we offer, but that probably brings it home for most people to understand that we have to make sure those places are cooled and powered, and they're beautiful, intricately built facilities. And our biggest pride and joy is just making sure we take care of our customers and they don't have to worry about those facilities.
Oh, that's fantastic. You know, I know that's important. When we relocate companies, when it comes to data and their servers and equipment, that's very, very that is a very important thing for them. And I love how you said, you know, we help people sleep at night. I mean, that's fantastic. It's so important. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Now, are you regionally based? Are you nationwide?
We are in various states across the country, and we hope to have some locations outside the United States soon, but right now we're located in various states all across the country.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. So I'm ready to really get into this. I would love for you to just start by just sharing your story. I want to hear the LaTonya McElroy story. Like, where did it start and how in the world did you get into HR?
You know, I actually think we don't share those stories enough. And I've been one of those people who, you know, you feel like you're bragging on yourself when you share your story. But for me, I had to really turn that lens around and say, as a young person who's trying to succeed and trying to make a career or build a career or just figure out what I want to do with my life, it would be hard to look at people who are in positions and who are doing what we think is what we call success, are successful, and then look at my current situation and see a path to that, unless people start opening up and sharing their stories. And honestly, I just did that the other day because I just felt like people need to know that it's not about a title or a position or any of those things. That's really not success. But I would like to share how I arrived where I am today. And it was just, you know, the fact is, I came from a situation where I made some unfortunate decisions, and I think that this will give some people some hope in their career paths, because in life, when you get out of high school and you start your career path, you don't always know what direction to take, and sometimes your decisions, if you knew what if you could look 20 years and know the future, you make probably much better decisions. But at the time, we have no idea what the future has in store for us, or what God has in store for us. So we make the decisions the best we can. And sometimes not, so we don't do such a great job of that. And I'm one of those people. I didn't make the best decisions at certain times in my life. And then there were other things that were unforeseen that happened that were not within my control. But I'll never forget that I had to make a decision as a newly single mom who didn't know where we were going to live, had to move back in with parents. I had to make a decision as a person who had not completed my degree, who I had no excuse. I had gone to school, all expenses paid. I didn't have to worry about anything. I had scholarships. I had worked hard through high school, mostly because I was a people pleaser, not because I knew what my class rank was until I was about to graduate in the top 10. I had no idea. But I just wanted to make sure everybody was happy. I was a perfectionist. I just wanted to do everything that I could to be the best at everything I did. Didn't have any clue what that was leading me to. So I went to school, all expenses paid. And I just made some poor decisions and life changes. And then I started a family and other things like that. But I guess the point I'm making is, at some point I ended up with pretty much nowhere to go. I either was going to give up, or I was going to give it my best and get up. And that's what I chose to do. I went and applied for jobs. I didn't care what the job was, as long as it paid. And it was a job with some dignity and respect. And so I worked 3 jobs at one point with small children. And I tell this because people don't believe this, but I would work at FedEx in the morning as a package handler in this trailer, pulling boxes off of the truck and putting them onto the belt. And I had to be there at 5:45 in the morning. That is too early for anybody to have to do anything, but I did every single day. And then I would go to my next part-time job that someone created for me in HR, because I walked in the door of my credit union where I pay my bill, and I was nice to the lady at the front desk. And then I went to the teller and I was nice to the teller. And then I said, do you guys have any job openings? And she says, I don't know, but you can get an application from Kathy at the front desk. And I went, oh my God, what was I thinking? I should not have asked that question. I can't get a job at a credit union. They check credit. You know, there are problems there, you know, and I don't have any experience doing any of that teller stuff. So the lady in the next booth heard me, and she's digging through her drawer, and I could hear the sound of it. And she reaches across the window and hands me an application. And I said, okay, God, you must want me to apply. So I applied for a job, which was really just, I was applying for a part-time teller job, any job they would offer me. I didn't care if it was mail delivery. But I got a call before I even got to my next destination, once I dropped that application off, and was asked to come in for an interview. I came in the very next morning, and it was an interview. I thought I was interviewing for a teller position, and I was having a great time in the interview, just talking and interacting with the HR director. And she said, I think I want to create a position for you. I'm going to ask the president about it, and it's a position in HR. And I went, what?
What is HR?
What is that? And I ended up with a part-time job. I only worked a few days a week. She would have to make me go home because I guess I was over budget or something like that. And I would go to FedEx in the morning, and I would go to the credit union, and I would wash up in the bathroom. Like, this is embarrassing to tell. For most people, they wouldn't believe it. But I would go, and I'd have my stash and my change of clothes, and I'd freshen up, and I would change clothes, and I would go and work in the office. And I worked so hard with whatever job I did. I didn't just do enough to get done and clock out and go home. I would be looking for work. I was researching. I was trying to figure out more I could do. How could I make it better? How could I could develop this program? Do you know about the EEOC program? Do you know about this? And I would ask her about all these things, and she said, go at it, have at it, LaTonya, go for it, LaTonya. And I would bring her all this, and I would research, and that's how I found SHRM. And so at the end of the day, really the moral of the story is, and then I worked for a law firm on the days I didn't work for. I met a guy in a restaurant on my way to lunch, and I started talking, and he said, I need some help in my firm. And I said, I know how to do that. And it was related to administrative work and bankruptcy. And I said, I've done some of that before, the trustee in Pennsylvania and Texas, and I could probably do that. And came in for an interview. So I had 3 jobs. I would bounce between these 3. Well, but fast forward, the main point in that is you don't know sometimes where you're going. You don't know how to get there, and you don't need to know. All you need to do is take advantage of the opportunity you have today. And that is what I learned from that experience. I taught my children the same thing. Wherever you are, work as hard as you can. Do more than what's asked of you. Never leave without giving plenty of notice. Work as hard your last day as you did your first day. And if you will work as if your paycheck is signed by God himself, and that he is the only one who sees and knows, you don't have to worry about making your boss happy. You don't have to worry about your integrity, your character, because you know when the door is shut and you're the only one there and you're paying yourself out of the cash register, that you're going to do the right thing, and that God is going to see that, and he's going to reward you. My first job was a bridal shop because I wanted to be in every dance, but my mom was a single parent. And I wanted to go to every dance. So my mom was in this bridal shop every time, and we would rent these dresses for like $20. And we would return the dresses. But we were faithful and loyal customers. And when she wanted to go on vacation or spend a weekend away and not have to be in the bridal shop, Mrs. Reed would call on my mom to come and work. And eventually my mom was too busy. So she would say, well, can you send Darniche, which is my middle name? And I would go and work in Mrs. Reed's bridal shop next to her husband's appliance repair shop next to their home, in like way down in the, a part of the city where not a lot of people go right now. But I did. And I worked there every time she needed me. And she would say, just pay yourself out of the drawer. That was my first job. I would pay myself. She didn't know, it was not a fancy cash register. She didn't know how much money we brought in that day, how many people came and rented an item. We would write up the tickets. I would do the measurements. I would do everything I could. But she said, pay yourself out of the drawer before you leave for how many hours you were there. So I would pay myself $5 per hour. And I never even thought about taking more than what I was supposed to have. Nobody would know. It was just me. I'm 16 or 17 in a bridal shop all by myself. I never thought about it. But if you will take advantage of the opportunity you have in that moment, and you would work as if you're working for God himself, you don't have to worry about anything else. And that's really the only key and answer to me, in my opinion, to success in life, is just doing those basic principles. And that's how I ended up in HR.
And that's the rest of the story. Oh my gosh, there is so much here. First of all, I think about the quote that I heard Mike Singletary say when I heard him speak when I was a young leader. And he said, you know what I enjoy most about playing football? It's the opportunity to play. He talks about opportunity. I took advantage of opportunities. You're sharing this story, and my mind quickly goes back to my mother. My mother was a single parent. She had 5 children, and she worked 3 jobs. And I'm sitting here like envisioning like what that could have been like, how challenged that is, but yet you found the opportunities, took advantage of it. Number one. Number two, you talk about you're a values-driven leader. Like when you said, I didn't even think twice about like taking extra money. I mean, this is just how I am. And I have the opportunity to do this. I mean, that right there is, man, that is so good. I have chills. That is so good. That is so good. So I want to ask you this. You talked about the lady at the bank, the next to the teller that handed you that application. To me, I think about mentorship. I think about people that God puts in our lives to help us along the way. Number one, either shows us what good looks like or what not good looks like, right? Can you like talk about just some people that have like helped you along the way? I mean, you shared a little bit in your story. Who were some mentors, number one, and do you mentor others today?
Okay, good questions. And I think back, and Veronica was the name of the lady who did that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we mentor people and we don't know it. In other words, sometimes we just need to be who God wants us to be in the moment, and or who live our life values based and character based in the moment, and you just don't know who you'll have an impact on. And she didn't think anything of it, but that same lady came to me after I was working for a little while, and she says, I'm thinking about starting a business and I want to get a business loan, and I don't know, I need a business plan or something like that, and I don't know what it is. And she didn't have the means to research it and find it on her own. So I researched and I found, at the time, I'm assuming she didn't because she came to me, but I went and found a business plan example, and I kind of talked her through the process, and she finished her business plan and she got the loan, and she started a business that's still in business today here in our city. That's that woman that handed me that teller application was working, as a teller herself that day. And fast forward, 10 years, or actually it's been 15 years now, but she's been in business for, I think, over 10 years, or approximately 10 years now on her own. And so she was reaching to help me, but I still think back, that's the kind of person she was. And now you see where it took her. And for me, mentoring can be like that. And in a lot of cases, people have mentored me and they didn't know it. But there are some people who were instrumental in mentoring me, whether it was directly or indirectly. First of all, the women in my life as I was being raised, they were my mentors. My mother was my mentor. She was my biggest cheerleader. She was my motivation to keep doing what I did. She was one of those people who, whenever I did something, her children did something good, she was one of those people who wanted to tell the whole world. And she would tell our family, and she would tell our friends, and she would put it in the church announcements. Okay. And whenever you feel that sense of pride, and that that someone's in your corner and that they're pushing for you, and that they're that proud of the things that you accomplish, it makes you realize that people actually see me. And my mom gave me that, and she gave my brother and my sister that, and my aunts and my grandmother, they gave that. They were also very successful people. They had that inner drive, and they overcame a lot of odds. One of my aunts, they didn't have the opportunities we have, but they took advantage of the ones they did. One of my aunts washed clothes for a living for a period of time, and when she was a little girl, she would clean houses and everything, and the people she worked for didn't always show her kindness, but she kept going. And there were times when she had to have to redo the load because one little item was wrong or didn't look right, and she couldn't figure out why, but she'd have to redo the whole thing and start over all the washing. And then after that, it would be after dark, and she wouldn't have a way home because she would take a bus, but the buses would stop. So she would have to walk all the way several miles at night without light, and the person she worked for had transportation, but didn't take her home. But she didn't quit. And she kept going, and she ended up retiring at a local telephone company years later. I have another aunt who was a part of when school choice became, or integration became a choice, I forget the freedom of choice, but they made incentives for people to actually go through the process of integration. While it was legal to and the law for the schools to be integrated, they were not. And she was one of the first to decide to go to a school that had been previously segregated, and leave her school where she'd grown up. And she left, and her locker was bombed. She opened her locker, and she could have been killed. She they had to have the National Guard come in and seal the school because there were people trying to hurt the students, trying to riot against the integration process. That's a little ugly part of our history. I'm really not focused on the fact that it was there were racial issues. That's not what this is about. This is about someone who did what was not popular, what was hard, and she succeeded. She was successful. She became an officer on our campus. My dad was a vice president of the student body, and these are things that should not have happened. The other aunt was in the top 7 of her class. They have a lot of students. She was the first one to be in the top 10 who was a minority at that school. The one who had the locker bombed went on to be an HR manager for BP. I didn't even know that until I was deep into HR, that she had gone on to be HR at local Red River Army Depot, and then on to progress in her field to work for oil companies. And she was the first one to be minority woman to be the HR director for a refinery in Virginia. And she progressed in her field, but this is the same woman who went against the odds and did what was hard and overcame adversity and kept being good, and kept doing the right thing. And so this is her. And then the other aunt, who was the first to be in the top 10, went on to work many, many years and retire at Dow Chemical. And she still has patents on some chemical formulas that she created. And they're still using her trainings that she developed for the labs all over the world. Because she was in charge of training all preparation and training for all of the lab workers, but she's a chemist by trade. But these are things that they taught me and they didn't know they were teaching me. I get to go and look at their lives and talk to them and realize it's because of who they were that they were able to do those things. And I learned those traits from being around them. That stick-to-itness, that tough mentality, that not giving up, that fighter on the inside, all of that came from them, and the character came from them. And then, of course, I had Robert Utsey. He was a band director, but I didn't have a lot of great male role models growing up. A lot of our men had difficulties and so many things to overcome, so many closed doors, so much lack of opportunity, that it was hard to find a man who was successful in his own right. There were men who would work the same job and make very little money for years and years and years and years, but they were faithful and took care of their families. And then there were others who just felt that they just did never have the opportunities in life. I had uncles that went to the military and came back and endured so many things, but they didn't have the same rights after they came back that others did. So they had to really struggle through life a little bit more. So you find in our history, my history, there were great men, but there weren't so many that you could look up to because they had their own battles and their own struggles. And I had a few in my family that inspired me for sure. But and we had those in our church who were always supportive and inspirational, that served our church and rebuilt our church when it was burned a couple of times, and just did so many different things. But my band director was this amazing man. His name is Robert Utsey, or was Robert Utsey, the late. And he inspired students in a way that you knew in order to succeed, you were going to have to work. But he made you want it. And he would say, you gotta want it. And he would thump our fingers and say, you gotta want it. And if we didn't have it he would give us an assignment and we didn't have it ready or we didn't practice, he would thump our fingers. He actually would he was known for throwing things. But at the end of the day, we knew it wasn't about him being, embarrassed or him being the best. It was about what he knew we could do, and he wanted to get the best out of us, and he pushed us. And he would say phrases like, we can, we shall, we will, and he would make us repeat it. And you're talking to kids that come from all different backgrounds, come from, some were great and some were not so great. It didn't matter who you were. When it was over and done with, you knew we can, we shall, we will. And he ingrained these things. He said, don't be on time, be ahead of time. I'm still working on that one, Mr. Utsey. And he would say, I'm going, we're going either with you or without you. In other words, we were a successful band. We were sweepstakes all the time. We never in the history of the time that I was with him had a second rating in anything. And I was first in the state because of him on my trumpet, because of him pushing. But he would say, I don't care who you are, We will go with you or without you, believe it or not. And in other words, you either get here, get on board, or you get left. And he made it clear that these were the standards. And if you don't meet them, the standards don't change. The standards are going to stay the same. You need to rise to the standard. And he would make us do that. And one other thing that that stood out that he would say, can we, shall we, will. But he said this one thing that I'll never forget. He said, I don't care how good you are, there's always someone better than you. And he always said that, and it would make you push, because a lot of times we want to compare ourselves to the people in the room, or the people in our family, or the people in our neighborhood, or the people on our team. And what happens is we get to a point and we think we're at the highest point because we're better than the people in the room. In our minds, somehow we think that. May not even be true, but that's the mentality. But he said, but he created a different view when he said, I don't care how good you are, there's always someone better than you. And so it took you from competing with the person next to you to competing with yourself. Okay, I was this good yesterday, but I need to be better. I need to be better than I was yesterday, in spite of how I measure up to other people. And so he gave you that mentality. There's always someone better than you. And I'll never forget all of the lessons that he taught. And I'm 44 years old. I graduated high school at 17. I had the privilege and honor to have 7 years, 5th grade to 12th grade with Mr. Utz, 8 years. And that's all. But he's still having an impact on my life today. And of course, there are people in our field who've mentored me over the years, or people who believed in me when I didn't, I can name so many people who believed in me and who've pushed me and who've inspired and encouraged me. And I would leave a lot of people out if I began to do that. But the main thing is that mentoring doesn't just happen on purpose. And for me, that is how I mentor. I try not to mentor in a way that you're my mentee and I'm looking down on you. Right. I try to live a life that's an example, and I try to be a light. My first opportunity is my own children. I have daughters and a son, and I first think that's my first priority for mentorship. Of course, I've been teaching, which with COVID, we haven't been doing this so much, but Bible study and Sunday school for over 20 years. Or in some form or fashion, teaching or working with youth for over 20 years. That leads me to mentoring children from our church, or mentoring my own children's friends. And you don't really know you're mentoring people until sometimes they reach out to you and say, Ms. Darniche, thank you for everything you've done for me. And you've always been someone I could look up to, and thank you for praying for me, or thank you. And I go, and I think to myself, what did I do? And it can be one little thing. You can just say, you're beautiful and you can do it. Anything you put your mind to, you can do it. And you might be just saying it in passing and moving on. But I think that if your life does most of the speaking, and you use words when necessary, which someone says, I preach at all times, but use words only when necessary, then you're mentoring without even knowing it sometimes. And that's probably the majority of the mentoring I do. I do have people that I check in with and make sure I'm talking to on a regular basis. And of course, our HR team, I try to be an inspiration somehow to our team and help them grow and reach whatever potential and goals they have. But most of it is more indirect.
Wow. Listen, I am so inspired. We're only halfway through and I am so inspired. That is so good. I appreciate you sharing that. I was thinking, what a gift to have, first of all, your band director. I mean, someone, I was listening to someone talk about, great mentors will challenge you along the way. And it sounds like that's what he did. He challenged you to be better, not ever be complacent, just keep getting better along the way, because the better you get, the more you can help others. But typically my guests are supposed to be the ones to have tears in their eyes. But when you're telling your story about your mom, I'm sitting here, I've got tears in my eyes. I'm about to bawl here. That was so good. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that's going to help a lot of people. I'm wondering, now, you shared that, we're in this COVID COVID time. COVID arrived. We're navigating through that. I'm curious, you know, as far as like your leadership, have you seen that, or have you had to change your leadership approach at all because of this COVID? Are you doing anything different or not?
Um, you know, I could say what has changed most about my leadership for this period of or season of time has been transparency.
Mm.
I've been more transparent than before, and part of it is just being intentional about that, and also building relationships with others that that I'm leading. What this has taught me is you have to lead by example, and you can't ask from others things that you don't require of yourself. And I've always wanted to give more than I've ever asked anybody else. I would never ask anybody else to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. There is no job that I won't do. A title doesn't, a lot of people think that leaders just kind of don't do anything but tell other people what to do or organize other people's work, and that they don't really work. And so for me, transparency has been in having the same grit that I expect from my team and putting in the same effort that I expect from my team. And I show them. I mean, I don't tell people what to do. I show people what to do. And in that case, I demonstrate what I expect. And so the accountability is there. We have a touch point meeting on Mondays. We have a full meeting with an agenda that goes through every single area within our teams, within our departments. And everybody is responsible for reporting out. And this is just my team. We keep track of statuses. And at the end of the week, we have a final meeting to talk about what are the big rocks or big things that we're going to be carrying over into next week, and what are our successes from this week. Where do we fall short on the goals that we set for this week, and or any of the major agenda items we had at the start of the week. And that has been, probably the most instrumental part of my leadership. The changes that I've seen in my leadership is that transparency, because I feel like leaders have to be accountable too. And a lot of times people are kind of turned off when you start making demands and asking them, okay, where are you on this? Because what the tendency is with virtual is for leaders to get scared that their people aren't working, right? Yeah. So what you do is you start creating all these checkpoints and items that they have to do, and then you want to know, where are you on this, where are you on that, where are you on this, and where are you on that? And people feel like they're being demands made on their time, and it's almost like they're doing it because they have to. But my phrase, which you mentioned earlier, is you never do anything like you have to do it. You do it like you get to do it. And so the challenge is to inspire people to want to do. And, we hold everyone accountable, but be the example and be transparent. Let people see the same thing you expect, demonstrate that. And so if you're not sleeping half the day and then getting up and pretending you've been working, you won't really have to worry about your team members doing it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, that is so good. I love that. I will tell you that I think that that's one of the things that I've heard from many different HR leaders and people and team members, is that they feel like today they're working even harder than they ever have because there's so many of these checkpoints, right? And so I'm curious, did you have remote work before, or do you have remote work going on now?
Our corporate administration is in Texarkana.
Okay.
And then we have corporate technical services in our main headquarters is just about finished remodeling, reconstruction actually, but that's in Addison. And so we have those two main offices. Well, most of corporate administration has been in an office. We've been together up until COVID, and we went through a point where it's work from home for sure. Everybody just work from home, period. No working in office. To work back to work. And then when the pandemic kind of didn't do what we thought it was going to do, we went back to working from home, but you can come to the office and it's optional. So most everybody is working from home. But of course, all of our teams are on a physical site, but we work harder, like you said, from home than we ever did. We always have worked hard as a team. We've always worked hard, but it does seem like we work even harder now that we're working from home. I mean, there is a lot I can tell you about that, but I think it's a good thing. I think for productivity, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too, whenever we look at that, I think it's like, okay, typically we would be driving into work, right? So we're scheduling stuff during that drive. We don't have that, we call it transition time, right?
Yeah.
We don't have that transition time. Okay, now we're going to go to these different places, and we're not doing that now. So therefore, we're filling it up with work. And then at the end of the day, we're like, oh my gosh, I am just exhausted.
Yeah.
But I've had a conversation with a couple of different HR leaders, and we're talking about, remote work. Is it here to stay? And I think what we're finding is that we figured out that we can do it, but it is so much better when we're all together in one environment.
Yeah. I agree. We use Teams a lot, and we do have a lot of video calls, and we're chatting, engaging with the team all day long with Teams chat. It's an excellent tool, and I'm sure there are other ones, but we really enjoy that because we share documents in OneNote, in SharePoint, and so we are really, really closely tied. I think the key though to not getting burned out and not over extending yourselves, or not feeling like you just are. My kids, here's what happened. My sister told me at my birthday party, "You're a workaholic." Well, she was telling someone else she's a workaholic, and I went, how does she know? But she realized that when she text messaged me at 7, I'd be going, oh, I'm just getting off work, or yeah, I've just been working, I haven't really paid attention. That started sending signals to people who don't even live in the same house that you just work too much. So I actually started creating boundaries, and that's just the bottom line. I started saying, you know what? I'm going to take time for myself. I'm going to take time for my family. Self was the last thing I was taking care of, to be honest. And I don't know what I like. I don't know what I'm reading. I don't know what I want to eat. I don't even know who I am anymore. For a moment, I was thinking, because all I know is work. But I started really just focusing on, taking a break, for real, taking a lunch break sometimes, taking a snack break every now and then, stopping work. And it's okay to not come back in here, after 5:30 or 6 and not come back. There are times when I do still, and I'm always available 24/7. But I had to actually create some structure around it so that I could be my best when I'm at work, and take some time to relax, go fishing with my husband, do a Kiwi co-science project with my grandson, or just play with Play-Doh for that matter. It didn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that at the end of the day, it starts with us, right? We have to, first we have to take care of ourselves. Because it's kind of like, you're flying in an airplane and they tell you to put on the mask first so you can help others. So we have to take care of ourselves first. So I'm glad to hear that. And I think there are some silver linings in this COVID era, and that is it's allowed us to kind of do some assessments, some self-assessments on, where we're at. I love what you're talking about. You're talking a lot about, I share when I do a lot of presentations, I talk about goals. And in particular, I talk about who goals and who you want to be. And I love how you've talked about that, as well. I would love to, I want to shift gears just for a minute here. And, you're talking about leading your team. You're busy. You're busy. And now all of a sudden, let's talk Texas SHRM leadership. You also volunteer on the Texas SHRM State Council. You're a core leadership area director in the area of certification. And a couple of questions. Number one, I would love for you to share, why do you think it's important to volunteer? Because again, you're busy and that you're still finding time to do that. And then number two, what is it that you actually do as far as like we call it a CLA, but a core leadership
Mhm.
area director in the area certification?
Okay, so Texas, well, first of all, I discovered SHRM when I was learning about HR, and I couldn't wait to get a membership, I got that as soon as possible, and then I found a chapter. I found a chapter because I was like, oh, they have chapters too. So I was like, oh my gosh, there are people in Texarkana. And so I Googled and I found this chapter here, and I got engaged with the local chapter, and I just started doing all kinds of things then. I mean, they just put me to work immediately on a committee.
That's what they'll do. They'll put you to work.
Yep. I didn't know what I was getting into. Joey, Dwayne, I was like, what? Yes, I'll do it. But do you think I can? And they were like, oh, we know you can do it. And they would push me into all these little different things. And then I ended up being an officer in the chapter and serving. But I'll tell you, one of the things that is key one of the key reasons I volunteer is because I see what it did for me. When I was a person learning HR, had no clue what I was doing, to be embraced by people who were like trailblazers in HR and told you can do it, and to be able to network and be around those people at the meetings, little me in the room with these great people. I'm working a part-time HR assistant job and then staffing coordinator job, and I'm in the room with these great people, business owners and HR directors and managers, and they believed in me, and we would have committee things and I would be leading it, and it felt so good. It was opportunity for me to develop as a person and as a leader. It was an opportunity for me to develop relationships so I could go and ask people. Now to this day, if I need something, I can go to some of those same people and ask questions, or now I find myself being a person that someone comes to for questions, and our network with Dallas HR and all the shared information, and finding templates and finding all kinds of things and just asking real life questions. I've been able to do that. So now I want to do that for other people, and I want to be someone who's available to other people and to help advance our profession, and to make sure we have good, solid, qualified people doing HR. You know, everybody who has a title HR represents all of us. And we need to make sure that we as a profession are doing a good job, that we as a people in the profession are taking care of people in the workplace, taking care of our workplaces, making sure our workplaces are good, that they're places where people want to be, and that they know they're going to be treated with dignity, respect, equity, fairness, inclusion, that they know that they'll have opportunities to grow. And even in situations where it's not so good, that we can help them to develop, improve performance. You know, without HR, a lot of companies have a lot more turnover. They have a lot more issues because they don't have anybody who's got the finger on the pulse of the organization and who's caring about building relationships and employee satisfaction. And so for me, it was a no-brainer to get involved and to volunteer. And then here, it just kind of ended up, the rest is history. You know, as they say, once you start getting into it, you just can't get away from it. When you are away from it, you miss it. You feel like you're not connected, or you're missing something. It's like you're missing a whole arm or something. That's how I feel. So it's been a joy and a pleasure to do any kind of service. And I just ended up on the ballot for president-elect for my chapter. Now I'm involved in the state council, but I'm still involved at the local level. And I'm thankful for that. I gave the board a break a little bit because you need some new, fresh ideas and new people and new blood. And that's great. I was chapter president like 11, 12 years ago. So it would be an honor to be able to serve again. And I'll spend my president-elect year doing what you're going to be doing for the Texas State Council, which we will be building leaders. So we'll have other people kind of coming along. And one of my HR assistants that I hired at my previous job, she's an HR manager or director now, what I don't know her title officially, but she's grown, and she's moved up in terms of her responsibilities. And she says she would be glad to be president-elect after me. And that'll give me a chance to mentor her and to share with her what I'm learning to help her to be better equipped for it in the next year. So that's the volunteer side. Now with Texas SHRM, I do certification. That's my core leader area. And certification is a passion of mine. And one of the reasons is when I finally finished my bachelor's degree, and it took me like 9 years to finish. working and taking care of a family, but I finally finished. And
You
when I
did
crossed
it.
that finish line, I was just like, ah! And so then I was like, I had this plan that I had written during my bachelor's degree process. And my plan was I'll get my bachelor's degree, then I'll take a certification exam
Mm.
to get the certification for HR. Then I'll get my master's degree. And I had all this stuff planned out. And because I had it written out and I shared it, I actually did it. And so my first next thing after graduation was, okay, now I have to get ready for the certification exam for HR. And I self-studied. I did not know how crazy that was at the time. I didn't have all the materials that everybody has now. I just I ordered a book on Amazon that was about this thick and that was it. And everything else was like, what is that? I don't get it. Go online, research it. SHRM and other places and DOL and all these government sites. I was going and just learning as I went. And then I took that first exam and I got it. I was like, yes, I passed it. And then I went 3 years and I let it lapse like 4th or 5th year because I was so engrossed in my job, I forgot.
Oh
And I
no.
had changed jobs, so the emails were going another place. And long and short, I finally said, oh my gosh, this certification, I need to renew it. And they were like, it's too late for that, honey. You're going to have to take another test. So I said, okay, well, I got the PHR. Now I think I'll just go ahead and try for the SPHR. So I self-studied and I just buckled down, and I spent a couple of days after, right before the test. I spent some time before, but I buckled down and I went and self-studied and took the test again. And I said, I'll never do this again. I passed it, but I would not recommend it.
Not recommended. Oh man, I love that. I tell you, you could have like, I love how you responded to that. You were like, you know what? I'll let it lapse. Okay. You know what? I'm going to level up. I'm going to do SPHR. I mean, you could have responded with, well, I can't believe they won't even renew my certification. I mean, I love that. I have people that ask me, they're like, hey, you know what? I've been in HR for many years. I'm thinking about taking my certification. Should I? What do you have to say to people that are thinking about it?
If you're in HR, especially if you're in HR, you need to do it. I think anybody who wants to get in HR and has spent any number of years, even in a part-time capacity or going to school related to it, should be thinking about it. But if you're in HR and you've been in it a number of years, I really think it's important to get. And I remember we talked about the 3 C's, and I just kind of made a note of to myself to remember to talk about that. With certification, here's what you get. You get competency.
Mm.
Competency is so important. We can be doing something for so long and not know that, that we're not doing it the way it's supposed to be done, or what's working. Maybe, one of the things, I like to garden. I love
Oh,
to plant things. I do. I really do. I love to plant things. And I've learned a lot of tough lessons with gardening. When you just plant in the ground, though, it's like, I planted in the ground, and I hats off to anybody who can do in-ground gardening, but that ain't my thing. I did a whole half of backyard, and I just totally destroyed my backyard, tilling it up and planting all this stuff, because all the stuff I planted was good, but all these weeds were all over the place, grass and everything else, and it grew, and it kind of like took over my garden. And I couldn't really figure out how to fix that because the grass was so deeply rooted, and it was coming up because I had planted in the ground. There are some lessons learned with that. Now I have an above ground bed, and I have trapped out all of the grass and weeds by compartmentalizing it. And now I spend less time dealing with weeds and grass and other issues, and more time just cultivating my plants that I've planted. And that's, to me, the difference between working in HR without a certification and working in HR with a certification. You have to deal with so many other issues that sometimes we create ourselves just for lack of knowledge, lack of competency, that we could spend less time fixing problems and more time being proactive. Because when you get your certification, you can be proactive about fixing problems, about addressing issues, and before they happen, you've already got the plan, the structure laid out to prevent that. And so competency is important. So competency is that comparison for me. That certification gives you that competency. You're not just out there winging it. fighting with all of that. Of course, you're going to have weeds, and of course you're going to have, but it just diminished. The problems are so much
Wow.
more diminished when you have that foundation. And then another thing it gives you is confidence. When you know that you may not know all the answers, but you know where to find them now.
Yeah.
You know they're out there now. You know the structure. You know that there's a law about this somewhere. You might not remember the name of it, but you know enough not to get in trouble, because you can go and do your research and come back to address the issue later. You don't have to keep it all up here, but you need to know that it's out there and know where to find it. And confidence, that you have the confidence now that there's not a mine. I'm not going to step on a landmine over here or a landmine over here, because I understand what I'm dealing with. I'm confident. I know where to step. I know where I can walk with confidence and not have to worry about falling into a trap. And then credibility. For me, especially, being who I am, whenever you're a people pleaser, or you grow up without not really fully knowing sometimes who you are, and you don't have that full total self-confidence. And I've met people that are just they grew up like that. Me, I had to earn my confidence. I had to earn it. I had to earn it with hard work and proving to myself that I could do it. But credibility is the other thing. How people see you. How confidence is how you see yourself, and credibility is how other people see you. And whenever people know that you got the letters behind your name, it does, for some people or most people, come with a little bit of credibility. They give you a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt. You can come to the boardroom and have a different conversation. You can be saying the same thing, but you're having a different conversation, because the people on the other side of the table may receive it better, because they have confidence in you, because they see you as credible. And I think that that's a key to it. And you'll notice a lot of job requirements now have that on them, or prefer that. And then I guess that's the reason for that.
I'm so glad you shared. Okay, so we actually put together a video about a year ago about 3 C's: confidence, credibility, competence. I'm going to also put that in the show notes, because I think that was that's good. That's a good reminder. I appreciate how you laid all of that out, because I just want to add to that, and that is, when I took my certification, all these 3 things showed up. Absolutely, you are right on, LaTonya.
Okay.
But the one that really showed up was what you just now talked about, is when you get in a conversation, all of a sudden your conversation can go wider. It can go bigger, because you're talking about, business strategy, risk management, workforce plan, you're all of the different competencies. You're not just talking about one particular area. Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh man, that is so good. I am going to put that in the show notes. And if you want more information on that, I know LaTonya will be a great resource for that. I have one other thing I wanted to just dive into before we get to It's Time to Accelerate. And that is, we talked about, leading teams and talking about leading as a volunteer, but about, leading yourself. You kind of touched on it earlier. And I'm just wondering, is there a daily practice that you have that keeps you on track every day? Is there something that you do every day?
Yeah. So recently I was reading about all of the 6 things that every successful person does. And I want to tell you, everybody doesn't do the same thing. That's just the bottom line. But there are some core things that we do need to be doing to lead ourselves. And one of the things that I do, and everybody's is going to look different, is every day I spend a little time with a devotion. And for me, that grounds me, and that devotion keeps me centered and focused. You'll find when we get away from things like that, you're not the best person you need to be. And I don't know if anybody perfect on the planet, and I'm not. And so when if I get away from that for any time, that I can tend to digress into some negative thinking and some negative habits and mindsets. And so that devotion is important to me. I spend some time kind of meditating on a scripture and kind of applying it to my life. And of course, prayer, but my husband's a big intercessor. Me, I like my devotion time, and I kind of like to listen more than I do the talking. And then another thing I do is I listen to sermons and messages and positive things that inspire me and uplift me, and people who speak to me as a person, that are outside of, talking about professions and talking about, but speak to my inner person, my inner man, and just give me that motivation to keep going. And so I do that every day. I listen to positive music. I know a lot of people like to listen to the top music on the radio or on XM or on whatever, Apple. But for me, I feed myself all day, every day. And I think what you put in is what you're going to get out. And some of the stuff that's out there is just not, it's just not something that's going to help anybody. So listening to good music, positive things that uplift, and I do that. I'm reading, and I'm a busy person, like not busy as in I've always got to be somewhere, but I like to be moving around and doing things too. So I'm an Audible person too. I do listen to Audible. So I listen to the Bible Experience on Audible sometimes. It's got a lot of dramatization to the Bible. It's kind of cool. And I also listen to some audio books and things like that. One of the books I'm listening to right now is called Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. It's good.
What's it called?
Cast, C-A-S-T-E. It not for everybody, but it talks a little bit about the system, the invisible systems that exist for us in this society, and it gives a good history lesson. It's an ouch moment for a lot of the books, so I don't recommend it necessarily to everybody, but it was very enlightening to help me to see where we are and how we got here in terms of the dynamics that we're seeing politically and racially across our country, and the division and so many of those things. It helped me to kind of see how we got here. And but I don't think it's divisive, but it for some people could probably be a hard read. Wow. And I try to spend time with my family and recharge. Like me and my husband started fishing more, play golf with my brother.
Wait a minute! Did you just say you fish and play golf? That is fantastic.
Yes. And it's been so fun. I got to send you some pictures of me holding fish, because people are like, are you taking them off the hook yourself? I'm like, yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so awesome. I love that. I absolutely love that. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that. It's interesting how you mentioned earlier that when you don't do your normal practice, how it can really make you feel different. I'm the same way. I have my quiet time in the morning, and then I go run or I go work out. And if from time to time I miss, right? We all do, right? Mm-hmm. And I just feel different those days. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Okay. So I got one more question, and then I want to just head down the stretch here. And that is, you've given some incredible advice. Listen, you're in your lane. You are in your lane, helping people in the HR community. I'm wondering, is there any other advice you would like to share that you've been given, or that you find yourself sharing with others?
I can't really think of any one thing. I probably will regret if I share this one, but I will say this comes to mind.
Okay.
If you've never had anybody sit across a desk from you that you respect, and this brings tears to my eyes still today, who tells you you will never be something or never do something. And maybe it's not a person who's done that, but maybe life has said that to you, like you're never going to be, or you can't do, or just kind of beat you up and made you feel like you're not going to succeed in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And I say this because it happened to me, and the lady probably didn't know how badly it hurt me when she did it, but she told me I would never be the director of HR. She said that plainly to me, and I tell you, I was in tears. I was hurt. I I was disappointed. And I was, more than anything, I was feeling like invisible. You know, I knew who I thought I was, but evidently who she thought I was someone else. And that hurt more, probably more than anything. But then I also realized there must be some deficiencies or issues that I have that I need to get fixed. I don't know. I had all kinds of thoughts. But the one thing I will say to anybody is you don't let you or anybody else talk you out of becoming your best, whatever that looks like. And if you can just continue to fight for yourself, if you won't quit on yourself, if you will just keep pushing, no matter what obstacles come your way, whatever it is that we call success, it may not look the same for everybody, but it could be success in relationships. It could be anything. You can do it. And I just say, don't let anybody else or yourself even talk you out of it.
That's fantastic. You know, John Maxwell, I remember his father used to tell him, if you'll just do these 3 things, you will have an incredible life. Number 1 is you need to believe in people. Number 2 is you need to value people. And number 3 is you need to unconditionally love people. I mean, just those 3 things. And as you're sharing that, that's all that comes to mind. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I guarantee there's somebody out there that needed and appreciate you sharing that message. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and shift into, it's time to accelerate. These are the last few questions as we wrap up here. You talked about reading books and listening to podcasts or Audible. Is there a preference? Would you rather read a book or listen to a podcast? Or Audible is part of that?
Yeah, I'd rather listen. I mean, and that really challenges me because I'm not very oral in terms of learning, but I'd rather listen because reading requires you to sit still.
Exactly. You got to sit still. LaTonya does not sit still, folks. Okay. How about favorite food?
Lately, me and our family, we've been on like some Korean kind of food. So we have this Korean grill, which is kind of like a tabletop grill. And we like will take slices of chicken and beef and fry them on that grill, like right there in front of you on the table, and then stick them with some rice in a wad of lettuce. Like you just hold the lettuce and then you like stick the fried meat in there right off the grill with some rice, and you ball it up and you stick the whole thing in your mouth and you eat it. That's my favorite.
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh. Oh man. So if you're just listening to this, she just described how she made that with her hand. That's fantastic. Okay. How about, I got a couple more questions. How about a favorite, like, is there a favorite place that you visited before or a place that's on the bucket list that you would like to see one day?
I'm a little sheltered. No, I just got my I'm going to be honest with you. I applied for my passport right before the pandemic, and it was delayed for a few months, and I finally got it, but now we can't go anywhere, right?
Now you can't go.
So I want to go to South Korea because I love the culture, which I never thought I would, but I do. I want to go to South Korea. I would love to go to see a beautiful ocean with clear crystal blue water. I don't care where that is. That's just where it is, wherever that is. But I haven't traveled much. And so that's one of the things that I really would like to do. And so hopefully we'll be able to do that. So.
I'm with you. I have the 50 states on my bucket list, and I'm still about 27 states away.
What?
And so this year I was supposed to be at 3 different states, and I'm not going to be at any. So okay,
that is awesome.
So here's my last question, and this is a question I love asking all of my guests. And here's the question: LaTonya, 10 years older, is knocking at your door. What is she saying to you today?
Can I give you 2?
You can give me as many as you want. Absolutely. This is your answer.
I would say, first of all, love yourself. A lot of times people kind of have something they're searching for and they think it's out there somewhere. And the 100% truth is, when we start loving ourselves, we won't accept anything that's not good for our lives. And some of the worst decisions and mistakes that I've made have been for a lack of really loving and valuing myself. And maybe 20 years ago, I would say that to myself. And then I would say, you're not supposed to live your life trying to have things, houses and cars and all these things that really don't matter and don't last. I need to be focused on who can I help? What need can I meet? And, what is God's purpose for my life? Not, and not things, not obtaining some title or success or whatever it is. But, and I think that the most important thing is to figure out, why you're here. Figure out why you're here, and everything else is not important. When at the end, we're not going to be able to take any of this stuff with us, and nobody's going to care about my title or anything else. They're not going to care about your house, your car, your title, but they are going to care about how you treated them, whether you love the people who were unlovable or needed it, whether you cared for the sick, the poor, those that were here that needed us, whether we did that. That's what's going to matter. And I hope that I can keep telling myself that, not just 10 years ago, but today and every day. That's what we need to be living for.
Listen, that is fantastic. I am so grateful for you coming on the show today and sharing your story, inspiring me. And I know there's going to be many, many others that are going to be inspired by some of the things you shared today. And I appreciate you just sharing your wisdom or perspective. If someone wanted to learn more about you, had questions around certification, how would be the best way that they could follow you or connect with you?
Easiest thing is LinkedIn. If they're on LinkedIn, please just message me on LinkedIn, or let's connect there. And of course, Texas SHRM has all of my contact information. Reach out to our Texas SHRM representatives. And Bruce, you've been amazing. You have been more than a friend. You've made yourself more than just a co-worker or cohort in the profession. That you've been a friend to people, and that means a whole lot. I still have my letter that you wrote. I thought you were I honestly didn't realize what was in this envelope. Questions is what I thought. I'm going to get questions that he said he was going to send me, and I got the email, and then I opened this and I go, oh my gosh. But you've been a friend to people, and you've been building relationships, and you just don't have any walls. It's not your name. You don't live up to your name.
Not living up to Waller, am I? Oh, no. Man. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. So this is, I know we're about to the end here, but this is like the funniest thing ever. So you thought I was going to send you the questions. I emailed, but I actually just got through finishing a 70-30 challenge. And that is send 70 notes in 30 days and share that with people that have made a difference in your life. And LaTonya, you're one of those people. And I appreciate, and so, wow, that surprised me that you had that note today. Listen, you are an inspiration. I just want to encourage you to keep sharing your story. I know that this is going to actually post on, I believe, October the 31st. So I'll share more information with you once that gets posted. People are going to really enjoy this, and I know that they're going to learn a lot and be able to apply some of the things that you had to share today. So I appreciate you, and most importantly, I appreciate your friendship.
Thank you. Same to you, Bruce. Thanks for having me.